Does LinkedIn really help you get a job in 2025, or is it all just overhyped? That's the topic of this week's podcast episode. And on this week's episode, I'm not interviewing anybody. It's a solo episode. And I'm going to be sharing some findings and thoughts on this particular question. Recently, I came across a study from 2017. Now, yes, I will go back to address the fact that it was from 2017. When I shared this in a YouTube short and on LinkedIn, people immediately pounced on the fact that this study is from 2017 and therefore in 2025, it probably is not relevant. But hold your horses, okay? All right, so in this study from 2017 that was published by somebody called Ricardo Buettner, right, in Electronic Markets, right? They asked the question, they actually asked this question: does LinkedIn actually help people get jobs? And so they studied 523 professionals, and they found that individuals that use LinkedIn increased their ability to get job offers from 19% to about 80.5%. Okay, I didn't make up these numbers. Okay, this is from somebody's study. So if you're trying to attack the study, go find the researcher and attack him. Don't attack me. This is what they found. Okay, I haven't found any other studies that are from after the pandemic or after AI that actually replicate this study. And so because if there was, that's exactly what I would share. This is the only study I found that actually gave me direct numbers. A lot of the other studies that I've seen that were published after that, they focus on the how that people use LinkedIn. Okay, for instance, in 2022, there was a study from MIT that showed that weak ties, right? You didn't need to be very close, have close associations with people on LinkedIn for them to actually benefit your career search. And so what that means is you don't have to be best friends with people, right? You just need weak ties. And I'll make sure to cite all these studies and provide references in the description of this video. And also if you're listening on the podcast, I'll make sure to leave all these references. And so there is strong evidence from these studies, right, that LinkedIn can be very helpful to you if you are looking for jobs. In the first study I cited, they reported that it increased the chances of people finding jobs or getting job offers, right? And they also found, what was really interesting for me is that sometimes people have argued and said, well, you have to have more connections on LinkedIn for it to be meaningful. It just seems like the influencers on LinkedIn are the ones getting all the opportunities and so on and so forth, right? And I'll address some of that. But this particular study from 2017 didn't actually find that. They didn't find that you needed a large number of people for your job search to be effective. They measured that on average, people needed 157 connections for them to derive a benefit from LinkedIn. So they didn't need large networks, okay? And then again, the study from 2022 from MIT focused on the ties people had. People didn't need the ties to be like really strong links for them to benefit from those relationships when it came to job offers. So LinkedIn can be incredibly helpful from these studies. Now, this is where I want to also share my personal story, because I really think I'm just a regular person, okay? I'm just a regular Jane, don't have any, mighty abilities. I think all of us have abilities within us that make us unique, right? I don't think I'm especially talented, but I want to share this story with you because it just goes to show me, I've proved to myself, right, that you can go from somebody that nobody knows, nobody cares about, all your applications to jobs are being ignored, to somebody that now has people reaching out to them for opportunities, all thanks to LinkedIn. Okay, so 2015, I graduate with my PhD in microbiology and immunology. I move across the country from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to San Diego, California. If you have followed me in any capacity, you've heard me tell this story multiple times. I started a postdoc just as I'm about to hit the 3-year mark. the PI calls us and said, well, actually, after a lab meeting, he lets all of us know that we are all being let go because funding is running out. Research in the US is based on funding. If you don't have money, there's no research. And so because the money was getting finished, we were all going to be laid off. And so May 2018, I'm laid off from my position. And it was a rough time between May 2018 and the beginning of 2020, okay? So it took about 18 months for me to find a part-time position teaching as an adjunct professor at a university. That's how long it took me. I really struggled in between. I was applying to second postdocs. I was applying for assistant professor positions. I was applying to jobs outside of academia. Nothing was working. I was either not getting responses or, those responses that you get like, oh, thank you for applying for this job, but we decided to go with somebody else. Those kinds of emails. That's all I got for a really long time. Now, somewhere in between there, I did find a job. That job ended up not working out, and I was let go from that job. And so I was back again within a month or two on my back trying to fight for, a job. However, in all of this turmoil and difficulty, and it was a really difficult time, I will not lie about that. Now, at the time, I had a thought that probably you have listening to this or watching this. LinkedIn? LinkedIn? There's Instagram, there's YouTube, there are all these other interesting platforms, but LinkedIn, and I still get that reaction from people. I've seen it. The way people write about LinkedIn being a platform where people just go to show off, or a platform where people just talk about how they're happy to announce, or now there's even a really funny video series by Dr. Julia Chan. I think she's in Singapore, and it's called LinkedInese, right, where you can translate, she translates LinkedInese into regular English, and it's a pretty funny series. So essentially, right, this is a platform that sometimes can be taken as either being too serious or like, oh, it must just be older millennials and Gen Xers who are trying to promote themselves, who are on these platforms, right? I've definitely gotten that sort of vibe even when I've talked about LinkedIn. However, at the time, I had started, before I had been laid off from my postdoc, I had started a freelance writing business. And up until at the time I was let go, and even afterwards, I didn't really talk about my freelance writing business on LinkedIn. But after I had struggled to find a job and then got a job and then just got fired about a month later, and so back again on the streets looking for jobs, I found out that LinkedIn was a place maybe I could start sharing my work, right? And so I began to post about the articles I was writing, of course, if I was allowed to share. At the time, I was ghostwriting for some people, so that kind of work, you can't always share things that you ghostwrite because it's ghostwritten because they want it to be from them, right? And not necessarily you sharing. But the ones where I could share, where my name was on that article, I shared. And I began to share that on LinkedIn. I also began to share the results I was getting for those clients, okay? Now, if you're listening to this and maybe you're thinking, oh, you're talking about freelance writing, I wrote a book called Win at Freelance Writing. I put everything I know about getting paid to write. Freelance writing has been a life changer for me. If you want me to do a whole episode on freelance writing, you can let me know in the comments below. You can send me an email, DM, whatever, let me know to do an episode on that. But I put everything I know in a book called Win at Freelance Writing. It's on Amazon, and I can leave a link. You can go to theboldphd.com/writing book to find that book. theboldphd.com/writing book. Anyway, so I started sharing my work on LinkedIn, and an interesting thing started to happen. People began to reach out to me to ask me about my freelance writing services. As I'm talking about this, I can think about 3 instances, right? One instance, I sent in, and there were many more, by the way. I had sent in everything. They had found out about my work through LinkedIn. They had me write a sample. Then they decided not to go with me. But there were 2 others that I ended up writing for pretty regularly that found me on LinkedIn. There was another opportunity with a health tech company within San Diego. I actually got started with the work, and then the pandemic started, and then I also started working at the university. So, I mean, it overlapped, and that didn't work out anyway. So I just kept moving. I started working at the community college where I got the adjunct professor position. But essentially, I had quite a number of people reaching out to me through LinkedIn to write for them. And so it was working. Like, I was and at this time, let me tell you something. At this time, I don't even think I had 1,000 connections on LinkedIn, which goes back to the earlier point I was making about the number of connections you have or the number of people following you not necessarily mattering, okay, to your success on LinkedIn. So anyway, now I share my work on LinkedIn. People were reaching out to me. I was building a portfolio of written work from these clients. Whilst at the beginning of 2020, I had just started teaching at the community college when the pandemic hit, and so between freelance writing and being an adjunct professor, right, I was making enough money to contribute to the bills in my household. Now, mind you, in 2019, before I had gotten the job at the community college, I was also freelance writing. That's when I had begun to share my work. And so now I was seeing the benefit of, hey, if I share on LinkedIn, I share specific things that attract the type of audience I want to engage with me. Those people find me and they want to work with me. All right, a subsection of those people want to work with me. And so at the time, my goal was, hey, I'm going to share this writing work, and I wanted to attract people that want to hire freelance writers. And so I would invite people to engage with me if they wanted a freelance writer. And so that's all I was really doing. And that worked out. Now in 2020, when I had gotten the adjunct professor position, I was teaching multiple classes. Eventually, I had to start dropping some of my freelance writing work because it got to be a little much. But I was still freelance writing, right? But then I shifted gears a little bit to talking about my experiences teaching in the classroom, which was really super interesting. And I taught at the community college for 3 semesters. And I can't remember if I think it was the second semester. This was when, the pandemic was in full swing, and the vaccine had just passed. I forget what had happened, but there was a lot of news around the vaccine, right, going through the clinical trials. I think it had passed one of the phases, and that was a really good sign. And so I remember my students in my class asked, because my PhD is in microbiology and immunology, I learned about vaccines, right, during my PhD program. And so my students were asking me questions about what the news meant. And that was a really great teaching opportunity for me to talk them through the clinical trial process and how drugs get approved by the U.S. Food and Drugs Administration. So I remember that I shared that on LinkedIn, that I was a community college professor and my students asked me this question, and being able to explain the clinical research process to them was just such a great moment for me as a scientist and as a teacher, and somebody who loves to just share knowledge, right? And that post got a lot of traction. Then I think a year into teaching, a year into being an adjunct professor, we've now entered 2021, right? So in 2021, I landed, because I was talking a lot on LinkedIn about my freelance writing work and about my teaching work, right? I was beginning to connect with a lot of people within the scientific ecosystem. And I had connected with a manager for a life and health sciences marketing agency. Now, she had posted, I didn't even realize this until a little later, but she had posted on her LinkedIn. This was not a job I applied through LinkedIn. She had posted on her LinkedIn about a position within the company where she was the manager for the content team. And she was like, we're looking for a science writer. So if you're interested, go apply here. So I was like, okay, cool. I click on the link, I apply quickly. And this is another thing I'm advising you, okay? When you see decision makers post positions, Don't ask questions. Go jump on that opportunity immediately. Ask questions later. One day, I remember I talked about this and somebody got like really mad with me for saying that. And they were like, oh, we've taken all the conversation out of things. And he wants to have a conversation with me. I'm like, listen, everybody is in a hurry. I don't know about you, but everybody in life seems to be in a hurry these days. And yes, I believe in the power of conversation. I believe in the power of getting to know people, but especially with the competitive environment that we have, when you see opportunities, if you don't jump on them immediately, right, you're missing out, right? So this is not me saying that don't go have conversations and conversation isn't important. But before you ask any question, before you try to like write a whole essay about who you are, go apply for the job first, okay? And so that's exactly what I did. I applied for the job. And at this point, I've been freelance writing since like 2017. I've been teaching at the community college. I had been a scientist before. And that was the first time that job that Juliet, who ended up being my manager at CG Life and now is the director of content at CG Life, right? Juliet immediately, it was almost like the next day, within 24 hours, was contacting me about this job. And for me, that was the first time since 2018 that anybody had gotten back to me in 24 hours. Every other Friday, I send out an email newsletter to about 3,000 PhDs and academics on tips, tools, and resources that you can use to build a career you love. And I'm inviting you to join us. You can go to theboldphd.com/careers list. Again, that's theboldphd.com/careers list. Let's get back into the episode. Every time I applied for a job, it was either a rejection or it was somebody telling me, thank you for your application, but we don't need you. And it didn't matter where it was. It didn't matter if it was in academia or if it was outside academia. I either had radio silence or got the rejection emails, right? And so this is the first time. So I was like, actually shocked that she was responding back to me. And we talked. It was a really good conversation. It was just like that's what, again, you want to have a conversation. Eventually, you're going to have the opportunity to have the conversation. In the moment, just apply. We had a conversation and she said, I really was impressed with your resume. And I checked out your LinkedIn and it's amazing how you're so engaging on LinkedIn. And so we had an interview. I didn't get the job the first time. That's a part of the story I want to share. I didn't get that job with CG Life the first time. And I was like, okay, cool. But it was really nice to have that conversation. But she was very interested because she saw my freelance writing work. And I had been sharing about that because I was teaching, because I was sharing my, bits and pieces of myself. Again, not with a whole bunch of followers. I don't even think I had, maybe at that time I had like 1,000 people, 1,000 connections. I don't even think there was anything more than that, right? But at that time, she just said, even though she's not hiring me for a full-time position, she'd be really interested in keeping in touch for any other freelance opportunities, especially since I have experience being a freelancer. And I was like, okay, cool. At the time, again, I'm teaching at a community college, so I already have things going for me. So not getting this job, even though a full-time job would represent health insurance, because at the time, me and my family did not have health insurance, or I think we had health insurance that we were paying out of pocket, but it's very expensive. So anyway, moving on. A month later, Juliet reaches out to me and she's like, even though we didn't take you for this role, we want to create a role for you. And that ended up being, later on, I found out that Chris, who we're connected with on LinkedIn, Chris, who was my colleague, he was a senior colleague to me, and Juliet and the rest of the team had checked out my LinkedIn, and they were like, this person is an interesting person. We really should give her a chance. And they did. I didn't get the job the first time, but just by me staying consistent on LinkedIn, sharing what I knew, whether anybody was liking, commenting, or anything, right? I got a science writer job out of that. And I had gotten many other opportunities within the science and health writing space prior to that, freelance roles, prior to that, because I was sharing on LinkedIn. Now, fast forward to today, this is 2025. I'm talking about when I got the job with CG Life, that was in 2021. We're in July 2025 as I'm recording this. And LinkedIn has led me, the job with CG Life is just one of the jobs. I got another job offer primarily through LinkedIn because the person who had connected me with the opportunity found me on LinkedIn or connected with me on LinkedIn, found out we went to the same grad school, but we kind of finished at different times and when we were in different departments, so we didn't meet, and referred me to an opportunity with a great institution. Through LinkedIn, I've been invited to speak at over 20 universities and professional organizations, including Johns Hopkins University, Oxford University, Brown University. Some of them have been virtual, some of them have been in person. Through LinkedIn, something I'm super excited to announce, I recently signed a book deal through LinkedIn. And I've really only been actively using LinkedIn since about 2020. I'll say maybe a little bit in 2019, but 2020 was when I really took it seriously. A book deal that hopefully that book will be coming out in 2027. So I'm working on starting the book right now, but I just signed that book contract. I'm sharing this not to brag. I'm sharing this not to say I'm great. And that's why I began this by saying that I don't think I'm anything special, right? I think I'm just like everybody else who has something inside of them that they have to share. I mean, yesterday I was chatting with one of my friends and she was like, Gertrude, you like to say, I mean, she calls me by my middle name because she knows me from way, way, way back. And so most of the people who knew me from then, they either call me Gertie or Getty, in Ghana, that's how we Getty, they either actually call me that or they call me by my, which I'm not going to share. They call me by my middle name, especially my high school friends. They call me by my middle name. And she called me my middle name and she was like, listen, you have always been a straight shooter and just like talking and talking and just saying what's on your mind and being direct. Because I was telling her about a situation where I had told the truth, but I think I told her a little bit harshly. And she was like, we could have taken a different approach. So she's like coaching me. But then the thing that I took away from that conversation was like, she was basically saying, you've never really been afraid to say things that are on your mind. And that's really good. But of course, she was trying to teach me to have a little bit more tact. So thank you. Thank you, Adjoa. You're amazing. The point being, right, if I can use LinkedIn, right now, as I'm recording this episode, I have about 30,000 connections, followers on LinkedIn. I've grown it a sizable bit. I am not famous, okay? Beyonce, Brad Pitt, Barack Obama, those people are famous. I'm not famous, right? But the opportunities that have come to me through intentionally and consistently using LinkedIn as a connecting tool. Personally, I haven't found a lot of success just applying for jobs on LinkedIn. I wish I could tell you that I have found a lot of success applying for jobs on the actual platform of LinkedIn. The thing that has been of greatest use to me has been to use LinkedIn as a connection tool, to use LinkedIn as an attraction tool, right? And when I say attraction, to attract the type of people I want to notice me. So in different seasons of my life, that has looked different. And so for the freelance writing season, I wanted to get clients who would pay me to write. When I was an adjunct professor, it was getting to know people in the scientific community. Now, it's still getting to know people in the scientific community because of my regular 9-to-5 job, but it's also connecting with people, PhDs, academics who are looking for work outside of academia and how to navigate that, right? And so at every stage in my life, I've used LinkedIn as an attraction tool to find the people I want to get to know, and I want to potentially get some opportunities from, and who I can also provide opportunity. And one of the ways that I've done that is just by writing on LinkedIn. And even on the weeks when I don't feel like writing, going to contribute to other people's conversations that they are having. So you'll sometimes see me commenting on other people's posts on LinkedIn because I'm just contributing to the conversation. It's like a big cocktail party going on, and I just don't want to stay in my corner and be a bit of a diva and think I'm all that. No, the other conversations going on. Even if I don't have anything interesting to share that week, I can go join the ongoing conversations and be a part of that. And by doing that, all of these opportunities have come to me instead of me going to chase these opportunities. The way the book contract opportunity came to me, again, LinkedIn, and I signed the book contract with the University of California Press. It's an academic press, so pretty excited about it, right? And so does LinkedIn actually help you get a job, or is it overhyped? It all depends on your intention, and it depends on if you're committed to using LinkedIn as a connecting tool, as a tool that helps you find out about other people, as a tool that positions you as somebody who is interested instead of trying to be interesting, right? If I just try to be interesting, yes, I try to be interesting, right? Because then nobody's going to listen to me. I try to be interesting, but I also try to be interested in people. When people reach out to me, I can't respond to everybody. These days, one of the things that's happening is I can no longer do informational interviews. It's just something that I no longer can take as part of my bandwidth of my life. I cannot do them. But you know what I can do? I can point people to resources. If I don't have the answer to a question and somebody DMs me, I'll try to reach out. Sometimes I can't get to every single message, and that's because sometimes by the time I even have a minute to breathe and get to your message, I have multiple other messages I have to respond to. So if you've ever messaged me and I haven't responded, please forgive me. I wasn't trying to, actually, now that I'm even talking about, there's one message I think I have to respond to. I am so sorry. It's not intentional, but my goal has always been to be helpful. And in doing that, the byproduct has been people saying, hey, I really like your work. I really would like to be a part of what you are doing. So LinkedIn can help you, but not in the way that a lot of us may be thinking. Like I was saying, I haven't found LinkedIn particularly useful for job applications. And I think it's very related to a study I had read a long time ago that was published on NPR. And I think that was a long time ago, it was like 15 years ago, where they were talking about how 70% of jobs are not actually posted online. So, and then the 30% that are posted online, by the time you find them, they are probably already filled. And how are they filled? They're filled by people's networks. So if you are not using a tool and a tool like LinkedIn, I have so many thoughts going right now, but if you're not using a tool like LinkedIn, to connect, right? Not just to apply. You can definitely find jobs on LinkedIn. But for me, it hasn't worked out that way. But what has really worked out has been connecting with people. Now, that being said, LinkedIn is just one online platform. There's so many other opportunities for you to connect and meet with people, and for those connections to help you. Listen, relationship building, one of the things I found over the last 5 years is that relationship building is a long game. You have to be willing for it to be a long game. I didn't just wake up one day and get a book contract. I didn't just wake up one day and get invited to speak at universities. I didn't just wake up one day and then people want to give me jobs. Okay? I remember there was this one time I got a job and I was turning it down. And the person was like, oh, why are you turning it down? We really liked you. And I was like, well, I have another job offer, and it's the job I have right now. And the person said something, said, wow, in a time like this, that's a really great place to be, that you have two job offers at the same time. And this was true, like 2 job offers in the same month. Within the span of a month, I had 2 job offers at a time when it's not been easy for people to find jobs, right? And I owe a lot of that to connecting to people on LinkedIn. So if you're on the fence about LinkedIn, or you think LinkedIn is overhyped, listen, you're entitled to what you want to think. But I would say also not to completely rule LinkedIn out. Because if you intentionally use it, if you decide in your mind that it's a long play for you and not just something that you're hoping will be in a flash in a pan, get a job fast, get rich quick, right? If you take off those get quick results lenses off, you will find that it pays off in so many more ways than you imagine. And for me, definitely that has been the reality. So let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. Did you enjoy this solo episode? Should I do more solo episodes? Let me know.